The training hall on Station Virmac smelled like fear and recycled air, which was funny because most of the cadets present didn't even have noses. Not in the way humans understood them, anyway. Commander Threll stood at the observation deck, his three eyes blinking in sequence as he watched another recruit fail spectacularly at the gravity resistance test. The Korthian cadet, all 6 limbs trembling, collapsed under what the readout confirmed was only 0.7 standard G, pathetic. "Next!" Threll barked into the comm system, his mandibles clicking with irritation. 60 cycles. That's how long he'd been training cadets for the Galactic Defense Initiative. 60 cycles of watching the finest warriors from 12 different species struggle through basic conditioning. 60 cycles of wondering if perhaps the galaxy had gone soft during peacetime. The next candidate stepped up to the platform. A Draxian, hulking and confident, muscles rippling under blue-scaled skin. Now, this looked promising. Draxians were known for their strength, capable of lifting 3 times their body weight under normal conditions. Threll adjusted the gravity field to 1.2 G standard operating procedure. The Draxian grunted, visibly straining, but managed to stay upright. Good. Finally, someone who wouldn't embarrass the entire station. "Retrieve the weight," Threll ordered. The resistance bar appeared, suspended by magnetic locks. 200 kilograms. The Draxian approached it like a warrior approaching battle, circled it once, twice, then gripped it with both massive hands. The muscles in his arms bulged. His legs shook. The bar lifted approximately 3 centimeters before crashing back down with a metallic clang that echoed through the chamber. Threll's leftmost eye twitched. He'd seen this scene repeat itself all morning. Different species, same results. It was enough to make a commander question his life choices. "Insufficient," he announced flatly. "Next." The Draxian slumped away, pride clearly wounded, joining the growing cluster of defeated cadets in the corner. They all had that same look. The look that said they'd expected to excel, and instead found themselves humbled by basic equipment. Threll glanced at his datapad, scrolling through the remaining names. Mostly familiar species. A few Zentari, those floating jellyfish types who were brilliant tacticians, but had the physical strength of wet fabric. 2 more Korthians, because apparently one family embarrassment wasn't enough. And then he paused. 1 human. Threll's mandibles clicked faster, a nervous habit he'd never quite broken. He'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. Humans were the newest species to join the Galactic Council, barely 2 solar cycles ago. They came from a death world called Earth, a planet so ridiculously hostile that most xenobiologists initially refused to believe sentient life could evolve there. The gravity alone was 1.0 G, which was considered high, tier in galactic standards. The atmosphere had oxygen levels that would be toxic to most species, and apparently nearly everything on the planet was either poisonous, predatory, or both. But stories were just stories. Threll had learned long ago that reputation and reality rarely aligned. "Cadet Mira Voss," he called out, reading the name from his pad. "Step forward." The human emerged from the crowd, and Threll felt his confidence waver slightly. She was small. Smaller than he'd expected anyway. Maybe 1.7 meters tall, which was tiny compared to most species in the initiative. Her frame looked almost delicate, with light brown skin and dark hair pulled back into what humans called a ponytail. She wore the standard gray training suit that every cadet received, and she moved with an easy stride that suggested either supreme confidence or complete ignorance of what awaited her. Threll would bet on ignorance. "Cadet Voss," he said, his voice carrying that tone of authority he'd perfected over the decades. "You understand the parameters of this test?" "Yes, sir," she replied. Her voice was calm, almost casual. "Physical conditioning assessment under increased gravity. Retrieve and lift the resistance bar." "Correct." Threll's center eye focused on her more intently. "I should warn you that every cadet before you has failed this particular test. There is no shame in—" "I'm ready, sir," she interrupted, and had the audacity to smile. Threll's mandibles stopped clicking entirely. Was she mocking him? He activated the gravity field, setting it to the same 1.2 G he'd used for the others. The Draxian had barely managed to stand under that pressure, and he outweighed this human by at least 40 kilograms. Mira stepped onto the platform, and nothing happened. She stood there, perfectly balanced, no strain visible in her posture. She rolled her shoulders once, twice, like she was loosening up before a light exercise session. Her breathing remained steady. She wasn't even sweating. Threll checked his instruments. The gravity field was definitely active. The readings confirmed 1.2 standard G pressing down on the platform. So why did this human look like she was standing in a pleasant meadow on some low-G moon? "The weight, sir?" Mira asked, glancing toward the resistance bar. "Yes," Threll managed, his voice slightly strangled. "Proceed." Mira walked to the bar. Not shuffled, not struggled, but walked. Like the increased gravity was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. She bent down, examined the bar for a moment, then reached out with one hand. One hand! The Draxian had needed both of his massive appendages just to budge the thing. She wrapped her fingers around the center grip. The entire observation deck had gone silent. Every cadet who'd failed was now watching, along with several other instructors who'd wandered over to see what the commotion was about. You could have heard a Zentari's thought bubble pop in that moment. Mira lifted. The bar came up smoothly, easily, without any visible strain. She held it aloft with one hand, arm perfectly straight, like she was holding a cup of whatever humans drank instead of a 200-kilogram weight under 1.2 G. She looked up at the observation window where Threll stood, mouth hanging open in a way that was definitely not commander-like. "Is this the correct form, sir?" she asked, her tone genuinely curious. Threll couldn't speak. His brain had apparently decided to take a vacation without informing him. Around the training hall, he could hear whispers starting up, shocked murmurs in a dozen different languages. "Sir?" Mira prompted again, still holding the weight like it was nothing. "Yes," Threll finally croaked. "That is, you can. Put it down now." Mira lowered the bar gently, setting it back on its platform with barely a sound. She straightened up, brushed some invisible dust off her uniform, and smiled again. That same casual smile that now seemed far more intimidating than it had before. "What's next?" she asked. "What's next?" What was next? Threll looked at his testing protocol, but the words seemed to swim on the screen. He'd prepared for failure, for struggling cadets who needed encouragement and remedial training. He hadn't prepared for this. "Commander," one of his assistants whispered through his private comm. "Should we increase the difficulty? Should they?" Threll's pride as an instructor warred with his growing sense that he might be witnessing something unprecedented. Pride won, naturally. "Increase gravity to 1.5 G, he ordered. "Add another 100 kilograms to the resistance bar." His assistant's eye stalks quivered with uncertainty. "Sir, that's beyond the standard testing parameters. That's level 3 conditioning, reserved for advanced operatives who've completed at least 2 full cycles of training." "Did I stutter?" Threll snapped. The gravity field hummed louder as it intensified. Around the training hall, Several cadets took involuntary steps backward, feeling the pressure increase even outside the test zone. On the platform, Mira's knees bent slightly, but she adjusted her stance and remained upright. Still no obvious strain. Still breathing normally. The resistance bar shimmered as the magnetic system added additional weight plates. 300 kilograms now. Under 1.5 G, that bar effectively weighed 450 kilograms. There were species in the galaxy who couldn't lift that much under 0 G. "Cadet Voss," Threll said, his voice carrying a slight challenge now. "You may decline this test. As my assistant correctly noted, this exceeds standard parameters for initial assessment." Mira looked at the bar, then back at him. "Permission to attempt it anyway, sir?" Threll's mandibles clicked once, sharply. "Granted." She approached the weight with the same casual confidence. But this time she paused, studying it more carefully. Her head tilted slightly to one side, calculating. Then she reached down with both hands. "Ah," Threll thought with some satisfaction, finally acknowledging the difficulty. Mira gripped the bar, took a breath, and lifted. It came up. Not quickly, not with the ease she'd shown before, but it came up. Her arms strained now, muscles visible beneath her skin. Her jaw clenched. A small bead of sweat formed on her temple. But the bar rose, until she held it at chest level, arms locked, stance solid. The training hall erupted in chaos. Cadets were shouting in their native languages, instructors were frantically checking equipment, and someone in the back fainted, which was impressive because that particular species didn't even have a circulatory system that would allow fainting. Mira held the position for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. When she finally lowered the weight, it was with the same controlled motion she'd used before. She set it down, straightened up, and despite the increased gravity pressing down on her, she stood tall. "How was that, sir?" she asked, slightly breathless now, but still composed. Threll realized his hands were shaking. All 4 of them. He'd commanded troops in actual combat, faced down pirate fleets and hostile territory negotiations. But watching a first-day human cadet casually demolish every assumption he'd held about physical limitations had somehow rattled him more than any of that. "Acceptable," he heard himself say, which was possibly the greatest understatement of his career. Mira nodded, satisfied, and stepped off the platform. The gravity field deactivated, and she walked back to join the other cadets. They parted for her like water around a stone, staring with expressions that ranged from awe to outright terror. Threll's assistant appeared at his side, datapad clutched in trembling appendages. "Commander, I've never seen anything like that. The force calculations are extraordinary. If one human can perform at this level, what does that mean for combat scenarios? For team compositions? For our entire understanding of infantry capabilities?" "It means," Threll said slowly, his 3 eyes all focusing on the small human who was now chatting pleasantly with a shocked Korthian cadet, "that we may have severely underestimated Earth." The rest of the assessment period passed in a blur. Other cadets attempted the test at standard parameters, and while a few managed respectable performances, they all paled in comparison to what everyone had witnessed. The humans' display had become the new benchmark, one that seemed impossibly high. When the session ended, Threll called Mira aside. "Cadet Voss, a moment." She approached, still showing no signs of fatigue, despite having exerted more force than any other recruit that day. "Yes, sir?" "Your performance today was unusual," Threll said carefully. "Tell me, is this level of strength typical for humans?" Mira seemed to consider the question. "I mean, I work out regularly back home, but I wouldn't say I'm anything special. There are plenty of humans stronger than me. Weightlifters, athletes, soldiers. I just stayed in decent shape. Decent shape? She'd called that decent shape. Threll felt a headache forming behind his center eye. And your planet's gravity, he continued. It's truly 1.0 g? Pretty much exactly, Mira confirmed. Why? Is that unusual? Unusual. She had no idea. Most civilized species evolved on worlds with 0.6 to 0.8 g. Anything above 0.9 was considered a high-gravity environment. Earth's 1.0 was practically off the scale, and these humans had spent their entire evolutionary history adapting to it. It's notable, Threll said diplomatically. Tell me, Cadet Voss, why did you join the initiative? Mira's expression brightened. Oh, I've always been fascinated by space, by other species and cultures. When Earth joined the Galactic Council, I knew this was my chance to be part of something bigger, to explore, to learn, to help protect the peace we've all built together. Such earnest optimism, such naive enthusiasm. Threll found himself both charmed and terrified by it. This young human had no concept of the impact she was about to make. She truly believed she was just another cadet, here to learn and serve. You'll do well here, Threll said finally, but I suspect your training path may differ somewhat from the standard curriculum. Whatever you think is best, sir, Mira replied cheerfully. I'm just happy to be here. After she left, Threll stood alone in the observation deck, watching through the window as the training hall slowly emptied. His assistant returned, looking worried. Commander, I've already received inquiries from 6 other department heads. Word is spreading about the humans' performance. What should I tell them? Threll turned away from the window, his mandibles clicking in a pattern that indicated deep thought. Tell them the truth. We have a human in our ranks, and we're going to need to completely rethink our training protocols. All of them, sir? All of them, Threll confirmed, because if one human can do what we witnessed today, and that's considered merely adequate by their standards, then we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Contact the Xenobiology Department. I want every file we have on Earth and its inhabitants. Atmospheric composition, evolutionary pressures, biological adaptations, everything. Right away, sir. As his assistant scurried off, Threll allowed himself a moment of quiet contemplation. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and terrors in equal measure. He'd thought he'd seen most of what it had to offer. But humans were something new. Something that evolved in conditions most species would consider deliberately hostile. They grew up under gravity that would cripple others, breathing air that was borderline toxic, surviving on a planet where the weather could kill, and the wildlife actively hunted them. And they called it home. They called it normal. Threll pulled up Mira's file on his datapad, studying her service record. Standard education, no military background, civilian volunteer, just a young person who wanted to help, who'd passed the entrance exams and been assigned to his station. There were 14 more humans scheduled to arrive over the next lunar cycle. 14 more of these gravity-adapted, potentially super-strong beings who thought they were just regular cadets. Commander Threll clicked his mandibles one final time and headed to his office. He had reports to file, protocols to revise, and a growing suspicion that the balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted in a way no one had anticipated. All because a human cadet lifted a weight casually with one hand. All because what was extraordinary to everyone else was just another Tuesday to her. Human, fascinating, terrifying, and apparently absolutely normal by their own standards. The galaxy, Threll reflected, was about to get a lot more interesting. 3 weeks had passed since Mira Voss made her spectacular debut in the training hall, and Commander Threll's life had become considerably more complicated. The reports from xenobiology had arrived, all 47,000 pages of them, and reading through Earth's evolutionary history had given Threll nightmares. Actual nightmares. Apparently, humans descended from persistence hunters who chased their prey until the animals literally died from exhaustion. Their ancestors survived ice ages, predators with teeth the size of daggers, and diseases that would have wiped out most civilizations before they invented the wheel. But the real problem wasn't the history. The real problem was standing in front of him right now. "Sir, with respect, I really don't think this is necessary," Captain Vorian was saying, his scaled crest flaring in agitation. The Sarkellian officer had served in the initiative for 20 years and clearly didn't appreciate having his combat training methods questioned. "My curriculum has produced excellent soldiers for 2 decades. "Your curriculum," Threll replied patiently, "was designed for species that didn't evolve in what amounts to a high-security prison, designed by a sadistic universe." Vorian's crest flattened. "That's hardly fair to the humans." "Fair to the humans?" Threll's 3 eyes blinked in disbelief. "I'm worried about everyone else. Do you know what happened in zero-gravity sparring yesterday?" "I heard rumors." Cadet Voss accidentally launched her Zentarii partner into the ceiling. She was pulling her punches, Vorian. The medical bay said the poor creature spun 17 complete rotations before hitting the padding. Vorian shifted uncomfortably. Injuries, 3 broken thought tendrils, and severely damaged pride. The Zentarii filed a formal complaint, suggesting that humans should be classified as living weapons and restricted from hand to hand. "Exercises? That seems extreme. Does it?" Threll pulled up a video on his display screen. "Watch this." The footage showed the obstacle course, a brutal series of walls, tunnels, and barriers designed to test agility and endurance. The current record for completion was held by a Draxian Special Forces operative and stood at 8 minutes, 42 seconds. Mira appeared on screen, standing at the starting line alongside 5 other cadets from various species. The starting signal flashed. The others began climbing, crawling, and struggling through the course with visible effort. Mira simply ran. She vaulted over walls that others had to scale. She sprinted through sections where her classmates could barely jog. When she reached the rope climb, a section that typically took candidates 2 full minutes of exhausting work, she went up it so fast the camera barely tracked her movement. At the top, she paused for maybe 3 seconds, then slid down and kept running. The timer in the corner ticked past 4 minutes, then 5. Mira crossed the finish line at 5 minutes, 16 seconds. She wasn't even breathing hard. Behind her, the second-place cadet was still struggling with the rope climb, wheezing and trembling. Vorian stared at the screen. "That's impossible." "That's Thursday," Threll corrected. "And it gets worse. She asked me afterward if we had a more challenging course because she thought this one was meant to be a warm-up." Stars above. "Indeed." Threll switched off the display. "So you understand why I need you to completely redesign the training program. We can't have humans accidentally hospitalizing their teammates, but we also can't hold them back from reaching their potential. It's a delicate balance." Vorian rubbed his crest thoughtfully. "What about separating them? Human-only training units?" Considered and rejected. The whole point of the initiative is species integration. We fight together, we train together. Besides, the other cadets are learning valuable lessons about humility and the diversity of capabilities across the galaxy. The lesson being that they're all embarrassingly weak compared to Death World species? The lesson being that strength comes in many forms, Threll said firmly. The Zentarii are brilliant strategists despite their physical fragility. The Corthians have reaction times that put everyone else to shame. And yes, humans are physically formidable. Each species brings something vital to the table. Before Vorian could respond, the door chimed. Threll's assistant poked her eye stalks through the opening. "Commander, sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation in Training Bay 7. Threll felt his stomach drop. "Please tell me no one else is stuck in the ceiling?" "Not exactly. It's Cadet Voss again. She's, you should probably see this yourself." They found Training Bay 7 in controlled chaos. A crowd of cadets and instructors had gathered around something, their voices creating a buzz of excited conversation. Threll pushed through the group, Vorian following close behind. In the center of the bay, Mira stood next to a loading mech. These machines were designed to move heavy equipment and cargo, capable of lifting up to 2 tons. The mech currently held a massive container of training supplies that needed to be moved to the upper storage level. Except the mech was broken. Sparks occasionally sputtered from its control panel, and the container sat motionless in its grips. "What happened?" Threll demanded. One of the logistics officers, a nervous-looking Prixian, stepped forward. "The mech's motivator failed, sir. Complete power loss. Maintenance says it'll take 4 hours to get a replacement unit here, and we need these supplies for the afternoon session. So call for another mech." "They're all in use, sir. Station-wide inventory day. That's why this one was pushed beyond its maintenance schedule in the first place." The officer's antenna drooped apologetically. "I was explaining the situation to the cadets when Cadet Voss made a suggestion." Threll turned slowly to look at Mira, who was studying the container with that same calculating expression she'd worn during her assessment test. "What kind of suggestion?" "She thinks she can carry it," the logistics officer said weakly. "Absolutely not," Vorian interjected immediately. "That container masses nearly 800 kilograms. Even for a human, that's absurd." Mira looked up, spotted Threll, and waved cheerfully. "Commander, I was just telling Officer Plaxon here that I could help out. I used to do competitive powerlifting back home. This isn't much heavier than my personal record." "Your personal record was 800 kilograms?" Threll asked faintly. "Well, 795, but I was having an off day. The station gravity is actually lighter than Earth standard, so this should be easier if anything." The crowd had gone completely silent. Every eye, stalk, and optical sensor focused on the small human who was casually discussing lifting 3/4 of a ton, like it was a minor inconvenience. "This is madness," Vorian muttered. "This is Thursday," Threll replied, because apparently that was just his life now. "Cadet Voss, if you injure yourself attempting this, I will personally assign you to scrubbing waste recycling units for the next month." "Understood, sir." Mira grinned. "But I won't get hurt. I know my limits." She moved to the container while the logistics officer carefully disengaged the mech's grips. The container settled onto a reinforced platform with a heavy thud that made several observers flinch. Mira circled it once, examining the handholds. She tested her grip, rolled her shoulders, and took several deep breaths. Then she bent her knees, wrapped her arms around the container's base, and lifted. The container came up, slowly, shakily, but it came up. Mira's face showed real strain now, muscles standing out in sharp relief, jaw clenched tight. But she got the container to waist height and held it there, adjusting her grip. "Where do you need it?" she asked through gritted teeth. The logistics officer seemed incapable of speech, so Threll answered. "Storage level. Up those stairs. 20 meters." Mira nodded once and started walking. Each step was measured, careful, but she moved. The crowd parted in front of her, like she was some kind of military parade, everyone too stunned to do anything but stare. She reached the stairs. Threll held his breath as she took the first step up, then the second. The container swayed slightly, but remained secure in her grip. Step by step, she climbed. It took maybe 2 minutes that felt like 2 hours, but she reached the top. "Here!" she called down. "Perfect!" the logistics officer managed to squeak. Mira set the container down gently, stretched her back, and jogged back down the stairs like she'd just finished a pleasant warm-up exercise. When she reached the bottom, scattered applause broke out. Hesitant at first, then growing stronger. Even Vorian was clicking his claws together in the Sarkellian gesture of respect. Mira looked confused by the attention. It really wasn't that big a deal. Happy to help. Not a big deal, Threll repeated numbly. Right, of course. Just another day. The crowd began to disperse, cadets heading to their next training sessions with plenty to talk about. Threll noticed something interesting as they left. Several non-human cadets had gravitated toward Mira, asking questions about her technique, her training back home, her planet. She answered enthusiastically, making jokes, putting them at ease. The initial fear and intimidation were fading, replaced by curiosity and camaraderie. That was good. That was what the initiative needed. Vorian moved to stand beside Threll. I think I'm beginning to understand. Oh? Humans aren't just physically strong. Look at her. She could dominate her peers, intimidate them, lord her abilities over everyone. Instead, she's friendly, helpful, almost apologetic about her capabilities. That's not physical strength. That's character. Threll watched Mira demonstrate a stretching technique to a Korthian cadet who'd been having trouble with flexibility exercises. Earth didn't just produce survivors, it produced a species that learned to be kind despite living in constant danger. Maybe because of it. That's actually somewhat terrifying when you think about it. Most things about humans are. The afternoon proceeded with the usual training schedule: tactical simulations, weapons qualification, emergency response drills. Threll made his rounds, observing different groups, taking notes. He was reviewing a particularly impressive performance by a Zentari strategic planning team when his comm buzzed. Commander, priority alert from Docking Bay 3. Threll's mandibles clicked irritably. What now? Cargo shuttle made an emergency landing. Landing gear failed on approach. The ship is stable, but pinned at an awkward angle. Crew can't exit safely, and the emergency services team is 20 minutes out. They're requesting immediate assistance. On my way. He arrived at the docking bay to find a scene of controlled panic. The shuttle had indeed landed badly, tilted at a 40-degree angle with its exit hatch wedged against a support pillar. Through the viewport, Threll could see 3 crew members, clearly shaken, but uninjured. We can't get the hatch open without potentially destabilizing the ship, the docking supervisor explained frantically. If it shifts, it could rupture the fuel cells. So we wait for emergency services, Threll said. One of the crew is a Gelthian. Their species needs to recalibrate their internal pressure every 6 hours, or risk serious medical complications. They're already overdue. Threll cursed in 3 languages simultaneously. Of course, nothing could ever be simple. Commander, a familiar voice called out. Mira jogged up, still in her training gear, apparently having followed him from the exercise area. I heard the emergency call. Can I help? Unless you can lift a 5-ton shuttle, I don't think... Threll stopped. He looked at Mira, looked at the shuttle, looked back at Mira. Actually, that's not a serious suggestion. That's insane even by human standards. How much does it need to move? Mira asked, studying the situation. The docking supervisor pulled up a schematic. If we could lift the port side by approximately 30 centimeters and shift it 15 centimeters starboard, the hatch would clear the pillar. But the shuttle masses 4.8 tons, and the angle makes leverage nearly impossible. Mira walked around the shuttle, examining it from multiple angles. She tested the hull in several places, checking for stability. Then she positioned herself at the port side, near the landing strut. "Cadet Voss," Threll said warningly, "this is beyond even your demonstrated capabilities." "Probably," Mira admitted, "but those crew members need help now, not in 20 minutes. I can at least try." She braced her legs, placed her hands on the shuttle's underside, and pushed. Nothing happened at first. The shuttle remained firmly wedged. But Mira adjusted her stance, took several rapid breaths, and pushed harder. The muscles in her legs trembled, her arms shook, sweat broke out across her forehead, and the shuttle moved. Just a centimeter. Then 2. The metal groaned in protest. Mira made a sound that was half grunt, half shout, and gave one final explosive push. The shuttle lifted, shifted, and settled into a new position. The hatch was now clear of the pillar by at least 40 centimeters. Mira staggered back, breathing hard, and sat down heavily on the deck. "Get them out quick. I don't think I can do that again." The docking supervisor rushed forward with a crew, manually cranking the hatch open. The 3 shuttle occupants scrambled out gratefully, the Gelthian immediately moving to a pressure calibration station. Threll crouched beside Mira. "Are you injured?" "Just tired," she panted. "And I definitely pulled something in my shoulder. But I'll be fine. Did they get out okay?" "Everyone's safe, thanks to you." Mira smiled tiredly. "Good. That's good." Medical arrived moments later, insisting on checking Mira despite her protests. They confirmed a minor muscle strain, prescribed rest and a regeneration treatment, and looked at her like she was a fascinating biological specimen, which, Threll supposed, she was. News of the incident spread even faster than the training hall story. By evening, every being on the station had heard some version of the tale. The human who lifted a shuttle, the cadet who saved the crew, the Death World warrior who also happened to be incredibly brave and just a little bit crazy. Threll found himself in his office late that night, staring at updated protocols that would never be adequate, reading reports that kept using words like unprecedented and extraordinary. His door chimed. "Come in." Mira entered, her arm in a support brace but otherwise looking healthy. "Sorry to bother you, Commander. I wanted to apologize." "Apologize?" Threll's mandibles clicked in confusion. "For what?" "For causing so much disruption. I know I've made things complicated. The special attention, the protocol changes, everyone treating me differently. I just wanted to fit in and do my part." Threll leaned back in his chair, studying this remarkable young being. "Cadet Voss, do you know what I've learned in 3 weeks of having humans in my training program? That we're a lot of trouble? That we've been comfortable for too long. The initiative has operated under certain assumptions for generations. Assumptions about what's possible, about physical limits, about the nature of strength and courage. Your people have challenged every single one of those assumptions simply by existing." Mira looked uncertain. "Is that good?" "It's necessary. Growth requires discomfort. Your presence here, and the presence of other humans, is forcing us to evolve our thinking. You're not disrupting the initiative. You're making it better. I still feel bad about the Zentari I launched into the ceiling. They're recovered and have actually requested to partner with you again. Apparently, they found the experience exhilarating once the pain medication kicked in. Mira laughed, then winced as the motion jarred her shoulder. So, I'm not getting kicked out? Kicked out? Cadet Voss, you're exactly where you belong. Though I am implementing mandatory strength regulation courses for all human personnel. We need to teach you how to coexist with beings who aren't built like living tanks. That's fair. Threll stood, moving around his desk. You saved 3 lives today. You did it knowing you might hurt yourself, without hesitation, because it was the right thing to do. That's what the initiative needs. Not just strength, but the wisdom and compassion to use it properly. Thank you, sir. Mira's expression brightened. Does this mean I can get back to regular training? After medical clears you, yes. Though I suspect regular training will need to be redefined in your case. After Mira left, Threll returned to his reports. 14 more humans had arrived today. Preliminary assessments showed similar capabilities to Mira, with one individual apparently being even stronger. They would all need integration, training, careful monitoring. His comm chimed. Captain Vorian's face appeared on screen. Commander, I've finished the revised training protocols. You're not going to believe some of the scenarios I had to account for. Try me. What if a human needs to rescue someone from a collapsed building? What if they're in powered armor designed for Draxian strength levels? What if they accidentally crush equipment during routine maintenance? I've got 47 different contingencies here. Send them all to me. We'll review them in the morning. There's one more thing. I've been watching the footage from today, and I had a thought. We've been thinking about humans as individual powerhouses. But what if we integrated them into mixed species teams? Humans provide raw strength and endurance. Zentari provide strategic planning. Korthians provide rapid response. Sarkellians provide leadership experience. Each species compensating for the other's limitations. Threll's mandibles clicked in approval. Now you're thinking like an initiative officer. Draft a proposal. Already started. After ending the call, Threll allowed himself a rare moment of optimism. Yes, humans were strong. Yes, they were overwhelming. Yes, they came from a planet that seemed designed to create the galaxy's most formidable survivors. But they were also kind, helpful, eager to learn and serve alongside beings completely different from themselves. They didn't see their strength as making them superior. They saw it as a tool to help others. That was the real lesson here. Not that humans were dangerous, though they certainly could be. The lesson was that Earth had produced a species tempered by hardship into something remarkable. Strong enough to face any challenge, yet gentle enough to care about those weaker than themselves. 3 months from now, the first mixed species teams would graduate. Humans would serve alongside Zentari, and Korthians and Draxians and every other member species of the initiative. They would protect the peace, respond to emergencies, and show the galaxy what was possible when diverse beings worked together. And it had all started with one human cadet who lifted a weight casually with one hand. Commander Threll pulled up Mira's file one more time, added a commendation for exceptional service, and authorized her progression to advanced training. Then he opened the files for the other 14 humans and began the process of understanding each unique individual. The galaxy was changing, growing, evolving. And, for the first time in 60 cycles, Threll was genuinely excited about what came next. Outside his window, Station Viramac orbited serenely through the void. Inside its halls, beings from a dozen worlds learned to work together. And somewhere in the training quarters, a human from Earth was probably doing something that would give him another report to file. He wouldn't have it any other way.